Hello and welcome to Asia News Today, a brand new week. Still a lot of influence in the Asia Pacific news today surrounding things that are happening in Russia and Ukraine. So we'll get started with a look at the financial markets, some other news coming up as well on Asia News Today. Shares in Asia Pacific have declined in today's trade as oil prices continue to surge, with the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war continuing to weigh heavily on investor sentiment. The Hang Seng led losses around the region, dropping more than 4% at one point before a small bounce back. Shares of HSBC plummeted 6%. China's Shanghai Composite shed 1.4% and the Shenzhen Composite slipped just over 2.5%. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 also saw heavy losses, tumbling a tad over 3%, some tech shares dropping over 7% today. South Korea's Kospi fell 2.3%. The Australian ASX 200 dipped nearly 1 full percent. The international benchmark Brent crude futures are up 8.6% to US 128 per barrel. That's down from an earlier high of US 139 per barrel, the highest since July 2008. Japan's foreign ministry has adjusted its travel advisory for Russia, urging residents not to travel to Russia at this time. The ministry raised the risk warning to level 3. Last week, the Foreign Ministry was urging Japanese nationals anywhere near the Ukrainian border or in Ukraine to evacuate. The Japanese Ministry is urging Japanese nationals to consider leaving Russia on commercial flights while they can. As for today, the ministry says about 2,400 Japanese were registered with its diplomatic missions as still resident in Russia. Around 114 Rohingya Muslims have been discovered on a beach near a fishing village at the far north of Sumatra island in Indonesia's province of Aceh. Officials say they've spent weeks at sea. Villagers helped bring the rickety wooden boat to shore and then reported their arrival to authorities. The head villager said the refugees looked very weak from hunger and dehydration after a long and severe voyage at sea. There were 58 men, 28 women and 35 children who were given shelter in the village. More than 700,000 Rohingya Muslims have fled from Buddhist-majority Myanmar to camps in Bangladesh since August 2017 after atrocities inflicted by the Burmese military. Myanmar security forces have been accused of mass rapes, killings and the burning of thousands of homes. Other groups of Rohingya have attempted to cross into Thailand or travel by sea in hazardous voyages to other Muslim-majority countries in the region.
You love the Thaiger. Now subscribe to our new YouTube lifestyle channel, Bounce.
Thailand's food, travel, challenges, and just about anything that isn't news. Only on Bounce. Link in the description below.
Indonesia and Malaysia have had some of Asia's strictest entry procedures in reaction to the COVID-19 surges sweeping through the region. But Indonesia is now considering a quarantine waiver for foreign visitors to Bali from next week. Meanwhile, neighbour Malaysia has announced the removal of restrictions on travellers from Thailand and Cambodia from March the 15th. For Indonesia, the President, Joko Widodo, will make a final decision today. Now, if it happens, visitors from 23 countries, including Australia, the US, Germany and the Netherlands, would qualify for a visa on arrival under revised rules. Malaysia will now allow vaccinated arrivals from Cambodia and Thailand to skip quarantine from March the 15th. Flight and a final list of arrival details are still being hammered out at this time. Malaysia's already waived quarantine for arrivals from Singapore. The Philippines, Vietnam and Thailand have already reopened their borders with varying levels of arrival procedures. A US federal judge has convicted a man in the state of Alabama to 160 years of prison for soliciting videos of Filipino children being sexually abused. A federal jury convicted Benjamin Walter in October last year of 4 counts of producing and attempting to produce child pornography, receiving and distributing child pornography. For 3 years, Walter sought women in the Philippines to sexually abuse their children and other relatives, including arranging for gang rape of young children. He would then send money for the videos, images, and live transmissions. The Philippine Justice Undersecretary has hailed the conviction of Walter not just as a win for his victims, but for other victims of sexual abuse and exploitation. She stressed that online sexual exploitation of children preys on the most vulnerable and leaves them scarred for life. In 2020, the Commission on Human Rights also said that the pandemic and its effects on the livelihoods of people rendered many Filipinos more vulnerable to exploitation. The director of the Russian-Singapore amateur Chekhov theatre has complained that in recent weeks she's experiencing anti-Russian sentiment. She says that people have been sending offensive memes and hate speech directed at her and Russians generally, making her fear for her safety in Singapore. Now, other members of the Russian community in Singapore are reporting varying degrees of hostility, particularly online, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine started on February the 24th. There are about 4,000 Russians living in Singapore. Many others say they're bracing for more online problems. Meanwhile, the Russian embassy in Singapore has not registered any official reports about mistreatment or discrimination of its citizens. They noted that at the time, we regret to note, the anti-Russian campaign launched in the Western media, which is actively reprinted here in Singapore, and it cannot but warm up Russia-phobic sentiments in the society. Meanwhile, in Phuket, Russian travellers who have found themselves stranded on the southern Thai holiday island have been granted an automatic visa extension of at least 1 month, as long as they can present an official letter from their consulate listing the reasons they're unable to return to Russia. One of Phuket's many feeder markets over the last 4 months have been Russians escaping the cold. Thai immigration say they recognise that there's only been limited flights into Thailand since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and that many of the travellers have reported problems with accessing money from Thai banks and ATMs. Well, that's the latest news from the past 24 hours around the Asian region. Now, because it's YouTube, you can always click that like button below and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, we've got our Thaiger mugs as well. You can buy those in our merchandise shop. It's at thethaiger.com/shop. Easy as that. But from all of us here at Asia News Today, we'll be back with another bulletin tomorrow.